Most should I be self-taught videos on YouTube are made from the perspective of people who are actually self-taught. So let's turn the question around. Should you go to college or university when you want to learn programming? I have a bachelor's degree in computer science. I studied for 3 years and graduated in 2014. And I want to answer that question from my point of view. Before discussing pros and cons, let's start with one important note. Education, where I live in Belgium, is way less expensive than it is in the US. And I can imagine that is a very decisive factor if you're thinking about higher studies or not. My education costs around 1,500 euros per year, so just shy of 5,000 euros in total, which, okay, it's not nothing, but it's way cheaper than the tens of thousands of dollars needed in the US. So just keep that in mind, because I'll come back to that later. We had lots of classes during my 3 years in college, from object-oriented programming to web development. There was a class dedicated to algorithms. We learned about how operating systems are designed. We did some accountancy as well. We had Java, C++, C#, PHP, JavaScript, HTML, CSS, assembly even. So there was a variety of languages. And there were also some general classes like French and maths and business analytics. But the majority of those 3 years were focused on programming. And so in my last semester, we had to do 3 months of internship. And I was looking forward to it. I thought I picked a good place, a web development agency, which was close to what I like doing the most. But let me tell you, during and after this internship, I was completely astonished by how little I had learned over the course of 3 years. It literally felt like I knew nothing. All that theory and best practices, patterns and whatnot, it could not have been further away from real life programming. And I was really dumbstruck at this point, so much that when I graduated, I didn't go to the graduation ceremony. I was thinking about studying something completely different now that I had this bachelor's degree. And just to be clear, it's not that I was a bad student. I actually graduated with distinction, although that's not as fancy as it sounds. But in the end, I didn't continue my education and went working anyway. I've made a whole other video about that, but it took me several years of self-education to get to that point where I felt like I was a productive contributor to the companies I was working for. And that kind of stings, doesn't it? Okay, my parents only spent 5,000 euros on my education, but even that, to me, that's quite a lot of money. Also, you could argue that IT is such a fast-moving field that it's impossible to have an up-to-date curriculum at school. But then, what were we doing? To what benefit did I spend 3 years of my life and 5,000 euros? There's one thing we did learn, and maybe more than had I been self-taught from the beginning. The mindset of a programmer. I learned how to learn new languages, more than just learning a new language. But again, 3 years. Looking back, I'd say there was one huge benefit to college. I really wasn't ready to start working yet after high school. I lacked a form of self-discipline, and college helped me grow in that area. On top of that, it also allowed me to stay in touch with friends, but honestly, that's quite an expensive way to facilitate your social life. I actually feel quite confident to say that if I had 500 euros and 1 year, I would be able to learn much more actionable knowledge on my own using quality educational sites. The problem is, I wasn't at a point in life where I had the discipline to actually sit down and study and practice programming on my own outside of college. College provided a framework, so to speak. It guided me, it forced me to learn things, even though those things might not have been as useful as they made it out to be. So going to college made that transition to self-education much easier. But again, I don't think that in itself is reason enough to spend 3 or 4 years of your life and a significant amount of money just to learn how to learn. There's also the argument that it would be easier to get hired when you had a degree. Although I think that IT companies that hire based on degrees probably aren't managed all that well. In my case, a degree only proves that I was able to memorize a limited amount of study material for a limited amount of time during examination. And I probably forgot around 95% of all things I learned by now. So, me having a bachelor degree in computer science, would I recommend going to college? Probably not. But you will need to learn a level of self-discipline that I've rarely seen in people in their late teens, early 20s. So maybe college is just a very expensive way to bridge those couple of years you need to grow up. But it begs the question, maybe there are better alternatives. Let me know in the comments down below. Leave a like, subscribe, you know what to do. Until next time.